Today I'm going to show you how I built my custom diorama of the NASA Opportunity rover, which roamed the surface of Mars from 2004 until it finally sent its last message on June 10th, 2018. The idea for this project came to me when I discovered that NASA has an entire library of 3D models that anyone can download for free. They got probes, tools, rovers, rocks. This guy, I highly recommend checking it out. I downloaded their model of Opportunity and opened it up in Blender. Now, I couldn't just print it as is. There's a lot of complex geometry and overhangs which 3D printers hate. So what I had to do was create a sort of lower resolution model that I could then disassemble for printing and painting. It took some trial and error, but eventually I had a set of parts I was satisfied with. Next, it was time to give them a coat of paint. I figured it would be easiest to spray the parts with a base color, then paint on details later. The base coat would also allow the brushed-on paint to stick better. While the base coat dried, I applied gold foil to the body of the rover, but I forgot to record that step. I started brush painting with the wheels because I figured even if I screwed it up 3 times, I could just hide all the bad wheels on one side of the model. The rover has a lot of cables and wires running beneath its solar array, so to capture that, I glued some pieces of sewing thread to the body. It's a small detail, but I think it goes a long way. The only detail I added to the solar panels was a line of metallic silver Sharpie along the edge to give them some definition. I assembled the camera mast and carefully added a few black dots for the lenses and other instruments, along with some more silver for the bare metal pieces. Finally, I painted the robotic arm and the wheel strut axle thingies. For the display, I got this Evron glass display case on Amazon. I was pleasantly surprised by the overall quality. It even came with a microfiber cloth and a pair of gloves to keep you from leaving fingerprints on the glass when you put it together. However, the base was flat and I needed a way to hold my Martian soil in place, so I measured the base and made a simple tray to hold the terrain. And to my surprise, it fit perfectly on the first try. Now, the one regret I have about this build is using this cheap oven-baked polymer clay from Walmart. The package says easy to mold and shape, and it, well, wasn't. I broke up the clay and began trying to work it into a flat sheet. Then I worked it some more. And some more. Until I finally had a decent base in my tray. My other mistake is that I worked the clay into the tray and realized that I couldn't bake it without removing it from the tray, so I just didn't. It was now time to start assembling the rover. I glued the wheels to the axle strut holder rod thing, then glued that to the body of the rover. I foiled the bottom of the solar array the same way I did the body, only this time I recorded it, then glued down the solar panels. I then attached the assembled camera mast to the solar array. Finally, it was time to put it all together. At this point, I was so satisfied with how the fresh, unweathered rover looked that I nearly stopped there. But I felt as though it would have been a disservice to Opportunity not to put Martian soil under its wheels. Turns out, Martian soil is somewhat difficult to get your hands on, so instead, I used this red ochre mineral pigment. I must have been very excited to dust the rover because I didn't bother to record most of that process until the very end. I then started figuring out how I wanted to place the model on the terrain. I wanted to capture a still of Opportunity creeping across the barren terrain, leaving tiny tracks behind it. So, to make the tracks, I printed a version of the wheel with exaggerated tread, then rolled it a few times across the terrain. Lucky for me, the clay beneath the soil wasn't dry, so it held the imprint perfectly. I positioned the model and carefully placed the case over it. The final touch was this simple stencil-style plaque I printed earlier, showing Opportunity's incredible lifespan. This was my first ever 3D printed diorama, and I'm extremely happy with the result. If I were to build it again, there are a few things I would do differently, but that's just part of the process. Thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like or a comment.